All right. Hello, everybody, or welcome back if you're listening on the podcast, or hello if you're watching live on Facebook. um, we're going to start kind of doing this thing now where when Tracee and I are like, hey, let's record a podcast, we're also going to record it like this and go live. Or if we don't have a chance to go live, we'll just record it and put it somewhere, either on our Pop Culture Collective YouTube channel, on our Instagram at the Pop Community, or here.
So beautiful faces everywhere.
Yeah, we're just gonna like just infiltrate everything. We're just gonna be the most beautiful disease that just spreads everywhere. Okay, so today, number one is Tracee is gonna set the chicken timer. And if you watched our last video and you listened to our last podcast, you know the importance of this chicken timer, right? Because we are all about that time management. We are all about being accountable to the contracts we make to ourselves. So we are gonna try to keep this under 20 minutes for both us and for you guys. So if you hear a super traumatic buzzing sound, that would be the chicken timer. But we're going to try to keep this under 20 minutes. We're going to try to hold ourselves accountable to that so we can just get right to it. So we're going to talk a little bit today about the justifications that us as women, and primarily us as mothers, feel we need to make to our community and the world around us about what it is that we do, about our worth, about our value. And if you're a woman or a mom, and if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably one or both. So you have probably at some point in your life, if not multiple times in your life, have had to make the justification that you are not just a mom. Or when you talk about being a mom, there's some kind of justification you feel like you need to make about other things that you do that provide value or that contribute to your family or the financial burden of your household or the world or your community, whatever it is, right? Like you feel the need to somehow, or maybe you don't justify it with outside means, but you try to justify it by how you perform as a mom, by all the things that you do. Right? Like you're the PTA mom, and I'm the ballet mom, and the soccer mom, and the homemade everything mom. And it's like if you can't just mom, you get to mom the hardest. It's like there's just invisible competition. So we're going to kind of talk about ditching those justifications, as well as dip our pinky toe in the pool of I think validating the experience mothers have in this world, especially the working world, and whatever that looks like. If you work a traditional job, if you work from home, if you're in network marketing, whatever it is, and how the justification sometimes people make that it shouldn't be harder, that there really is no difference, and so I think that we're going to kind of try to touch quickly on both of those different topics, but they're very much married together because I think it has to do with our identity as mothers and it feeling invalidated. Yeah. And the value of such kind of feeling the need to prove ourselves, almost how women feel the need to prove themselves in a man's world, right? Like we need to go above and beyond. We need to do extra just to kind of compete or stay even, if you will. Mothers, I think, feel the need to do that with just women in general. So if we're kind of going into the microcosm of womanhood, I feel like a lot of the times mothers are kind of constantly trying to run that race of always trying to be equal with the average woman, say that she doesn't have children, and I'm sure that there could be both sides of the coin, where women who don't have children maybe feel like they're devalued because they don't, because in the traditional sense of the world, it's like a woman's primary, like reason for living is to bear children. But I think that that has to do with the bigger conversation just about the pressures put on women in general, and that you're never going to win. You're not supposed to win, right? Kind of thing. Like the game is set up for you to fail, sort of, so that you're never meeting the bar. Right? The bar always changes. But for the sake of this conversation, we're going to talk about this side of the coin. So I apologize if you're not a mom and you kind of feel like targeted. That's not the case. We're speaking to the moms right now. So, and I guess Tracee knows how to mom, I guess, probably better than the rest of us, and she's got to do it times 10. So I guess, I don't know, Tracee, you talked, like for you, like what's it like? I'm sure so many people think to themselves, well, there's obviously no way she can afford to put them in daycare. So what the heck do you do? all day, or your value, or probably the other side where they're just like, I don't know. I don't even know how to put it into words, but I can imagine the looks.
Oh yeah.
Like I can see the looks in my face, and I don't know what they mean or translate to necessarily, but you know what they mean.
No, I've heard literally every single thing under the book, and not even that people typically mean it in a mean way. Like their intention behind their comment or their question or whatever is often them with a good heart. Like their intention is not to like insult me or to make me feel bad about myself, but I've heard it all. I've heard it as far as like, well, no wonder you can't work because you have all those kids and you can't, but I do work. I work multiple jobs. Or then if I say that, but I do work and I work multiple jobs, then people are like, oh my gosh, so then you never spend any time with your kids. Like you never, how do you have time to do all this and that and whatever? And I've had people talk to me about, well, it's not as hard to only homeschool one. So at least you're only homeschooling one, or at least you're only doing this with this one, or at least you only have one that's on spectrum. And it comes from all sides. It comes from people who don't have kids. It comes from people who have all like neurodivergent kids. It comes from people who have like totally typical, like super like into all their sports kind of families. And it comes from everywhere. People are always having a comment. And then as soon as somebody has a comment, whether their intent was good or bad, your reaction, I know mine has been multiple times in the past, my reaction is immediately to have to defend myself.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to do that. I shouldn't put myself into that box that I have to defend myself. They didn't. And if they were trying to, I don't have to let them succeed in doing that. Like that is a choice on my part to be able to just say like, no, I'm not going to entertain this narrative anymore. I am who I am. I have what I have. I do what I do because that's what brings me joy. That's what's best for my child at the time. That's what's best for this group of kids. That's what's best for my husband. That's what's best for our family as a whole. And just focusing on the things that make me me, and not focusing so much on like how anybody else from the outside is going to view me, and then kind of seeing myself in a new light. I mean, you've been with me on this journey, and how different I am now than from what I was 3 years ago whenever we started working together. It's night and day. Like I literally used to, I mean, I still catch myself doing it sometimes, but I literally used to always feel like I had to earn somebody's love or earn somebody's friendship or earn somebody's affection and things like that. And I had zero boundaries whatsoever. But again, the world might make me feel like I have to put myself in that box, but it's ultimately me putting myself in that box. It's me saying, you're not worthy of this because you're not doing enough and all of those things. So it's really a self-reflective kind of journey that you have to go through, where you're taking a really hard, deep look at yourself and fixing your own issues, which just like everything else in the world, it all comes from trauma.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, pretty much everything in the world. Yeah. I mean, I think that women in general find themselves having to justify everything they do, everything they wear, everything they say, their job, their lack of job, if they have kids, if they don't have kids, their weight, their hair color, their choices to put tattoos in their body or the clothes, like literally anything. And not to make, this definitely is not a woe is woman and down with the pain. That's not what this is, but it definitely is something to look at other women and say, we get it. You're not alone in that. Like, and I think sometimes we need to say it out loud to be like, yeah, it does kind of get daunting after a while. It does kind of get tiresome after a while, always feeling like you have to be this meek apologetic, always feeling like you are put on the defense, always having to justify your choices or what you feel is best for you or your family or whatever, and I just feel like, we can often say that we're having to justify these things because of society and the way that it is. And we're right. We can't ignore what society is and isn't. We can't ignore what they edify and what they don't. But we can accept whether or not if they extend that hand, we can accept the hand or not, right? Like if they create the box, we don't have to step in it. Yeah. We don't have to sit there and be like, well, this sucks, and I think part of that is just like what Tracee was saying, is the best thing to do is not to justify it. Yeah. Is to just let it exist, let it be, let it just be what it is. I think sometimes we feel the need, especially in today's climate, to always need to justify. why we do what we do, why we believe the way we do, as a means of trying to convince them. But also, whenever we try to convince other people, it's always a reflection of us trying to convince ourselves of something. That's a more clinical view on things. But I think like so if you're constantly having to justify it to other people, that's because it doesn't sit comfortably with you. And maybe there are times where you're questioning your value and your worth around just being a mom, or whatever your choices are, whatever your lifestyle looks like, And so number one, like I said, it starts on the inside. It starts with addressing that trauma or that narrative or your value, worth, confidence, because I've spoken to women who are very traditional in their views and in their family units, and just kind of how they live and how they raise their children. And they are just so in love with it that when you ask them, they say it with pride. They don't need to justify anything. Why? They are so dead set and confident in that they just don't. Yep, I'm a mom. Yep, I raise my family. Yep, we homestead. We do this. We do that. We homeschool. We absolutely love it. And end of conversation. Like they don't feel the need to give you their whole backstory, on everything. Trying to be like, ugh.
It has far less to do with what they are like actually doing. Like it has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with just their ability to feel secure in what they're doing. Like they feel secure in whatever decision it is that they make that morning, and that's just because they are ultimately just healthy, happy people. So if we collectively all just decide that we want to be healthy, happy people, and we work towards that, then our whole species is going to be so much better off, because we have a bunch of really whole, happy, healthy mamas who are raising whole, happy, healthy children. And then one day, probably whenever we're long gone, one day our great-great-grandchildren aren't going to have like any of these stereotypes or any of these I don't know what the word would be, any of these like things that they're having to deal with.
Yeah, like the stigmas.
Yeah, like you're putting people in boxes. They're not gonna have to deal with that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, and I think too, a lot of it just has to do with, again, we talked about that ever-changing bar. If no one's chasing the bar, there's no reason to change it. And there's no reason really for the bar to exist. Eventually there's no need for a bar. It will disappear completely, because it's like, if I'm not going to chase that, I'm not going to be the rabbit, chasing the carrot. Eventually, if a fisherman keeps going to a pond and there's no fish, they don't fish there anymore. They go somewhere else. And so I think it's just understanding that as long as we keep taking the bait, or as long as we continue to do these things that we feel we need to in order to justify our existence, then we're going to have to keep doing it. Yeah. We're going to have to keep justifying our choices, and I know I've seen a lot of this circulating around TikTok and Instagram reels and everything around women saying that they feel sick of having to justify, why they have kids, why they had kids so young, or why they don't have kids. Or there's just like, when you think about all the things that women get criticized for, it literally makes this box that's like this big that like the ideal person would fit into.
0.004% of women fit into that tiny little box.
Right. And there's always going to be somebody that has something to say, and it's like, what are we supposed, I think according to like the census or something, we're supposed to have 2.5 kids, right? I don't know how we're supposed to. So we're set up from failure to begin with, because I don't know who can have half a kid, but I think it's really all about not justifying yourself to the outside world. And it starts with not justifying it to yourself. And I think that starts every day when you wake up, feeling the need to constantly validate your worth through the things that you do and you don't do. And I think this boils down to the conversation we had on our previous episode and our previous live about, when you go to bed every night, are you fulfilled when you lay your head down? And a lot of the times, it doesn't matter how much you do. If you're still exhausted at the end of the day and you're still anxious and you still feel you're already worrying about what you need to do tomorrow, that's not chasing fulfillment. It doesn't matter how many things you checked off on your to-do list, because you're doing it not for fulfillment, but for validation, but for approval, but for justification. And again, even if the only person you're trying to get validation from and justification from is yourself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I see it in a lot of women too, where it's like, maybe they chose to be a mom now and they're staying home, but they're so quick to tell me who they were before and who they're going to be when their kids go to school, you know, or like, don't worry, I'm going to school. I'm going to school right now while they're little. So when they're in there, I'm going to be able to do this, you know?
The whole time that I was having babies and raising them, I was going to school online, and that was every single conversation. Oh, but I'm in school. I'm getting my degree. I'm in school. And yeah, I got that degree, got 2 of them, but I am now working from home. I mean, I'm utilizing my degree because it's what I love and that's what I'm doing, but like, it got me nowhere. I spent all the money and all the time and all the energy that I spent going to school simply so that people wouldn't look at me. They weren't looking at me like that. I thought they were looking at me like that. So that people wouldn't look at me like I was just a mom, so that they wouldn't see me as somebody that, like, a military spouse, you guys know, like we're dependopotamuses, apparently. That's like that's used. And I was so desperate to make sure that nobody ever looked at me and saw like, oh, she just sits at home all day eating bonbons while her husband serves our country. And like, no, it was like the opposite actually at that time. He was
right. I mean, as a person who's still married to an active duty spouse, I feel that. I mean, I don't feel that anymore, but I felt that for the longest time. I mean, we were 14 years in, and for the first, I think, 11 years, maybe even longer, you know, I literally felt like I constantly needed to justify myself. I constantly needed, upon shaking the hand of new people that he was introducing me to make sure I first said like what I did, or here's how I'm very different, because they always assume, oh, you're just a stay-at-home mom. Oh, that's so cute. Here's some knitting class, you know. And it was, I mean, and here's the thing. And again, it's like society does do that, because when I met one of my husband's commanders for the very first time, I went to go shake his hand, and he was just telling me, oh, all of the cute little fun activities that I could busy myself with. Then I like quickly was just like, oh, I have a master's degree. I'm a clinically licensed therapist, and I own a business. Thank you, but no thanks. Like, and, you know, still to this day, if he, you know, it's almost like I would probably need to internally reserve myself if that were to happen again. I think, again, our inkling is to justify. So even me now, knowing all of this, I would still fight it. I would still have to be like, you know, because again, it's none of their dang business. That's the whole point. It's not because I need to shut them up. It's not my duty to change their mind. It's not my duty to do any of those things. It's my duty to be confident in who I am, what I do, and not have to justify my choices. And part of that is just to be like, okay, thank you. and carry on my merry way.
For me, about a year ago, I was like the breadwinner for our family. I was bringing in a significant difference in income based off of my husband's, because I was killing it in the network marketing industry that I was at. I mean, I'm still there, but like at that time, I was like way too focused on my work, and I wasn't focused on my family and all that stuff. But it was like a badge of honor. I'm the breadwinner now. I'm the breadwinner now, and it took me a while to realize, but I got too big for my britches, and I was standing real high up on a little pedestal there that nobody else put me up there. Nobody else was like, oh, but are you doing enough? Like, nobody made me feel like it, other than like my own fear that they were going to make me feel like it. So I was constantly like, yeah, I work from home, but I'm the breadwinner. Yeah, I work from home, but I'm the breadwinner. I make more. Like, what? So then obviously that led to issues with my husband. He's not happy hearing me tell people all of the time that I'm, you know what I mean? Because then he has the same issues too. Men face this too. It's not just women that do. I mean, we're obviously talking about women because we're not men, but he felt the same way, like invalidated that what he was doing wasn't enough because I was so busy validating myself.
Yeah.
Like it was like a vicious cycle or whatever. And I literally just, I got tired of it, and I fell to my knees and I started praying for help. Like, bring me joy, show me what I can do to just be at peace with who I am. Show me how I can be a joyful mama, and be a joyful wife, and be a joyful employee, employer, business person, whatever. And it's going to sound so silly to some, I'm sure, but literally just like a voice in my head told me that I needed to dress the part. And that's where I began wearing dresses. I literally just stopped wearing pants, got rid of all of my shorts, got rid of all of my pants. That's why I started wearing skirts and dresses, because I needed to be reminded that my joy is not in being the breadwinner. My joy is not in working myself to death 24/7 and being burnt out. My joy is in being in my garden, wearing an apron, baking bread, homeschooling my kids, running them back and forth to hockey, being with my husband, and also, yes, working my job, recording podcasts, talking to people about how they can have better time management. That's where my joy is at. And all of that came from changing what I'm wearing. Like, it can come to you in the most ridiculous, simple ways. But even now, whenever I put pants on, like I wear leggings to the hockey tournaments because I'm like tying skates and stuff, people immediately will always ask, like, oh my gosh, you're wearing pants.
Are you okay?
And I still too will kind of start to fill that bubble up. Like, I have to justify it. Oh, I'm only wearing pants because of it. Like, I wear pants whenever I do hockey stuff. I wear dresses all of the time other than that. Like, I don't need to justify this to anybody else. That's the thing. I am still wearing skirts. It's a thing.
Yeah. I mean, and people may think whatever about that, but there's a psychology around it as well that we don't ever question. And, if you're in the work from home space or the network marketing space or the entrepreneurial, whatever, like, they always tell you to vision cast. And part of that is dressing the part. They tell you that, like, if you want to feel successful, dress successful, like, right? Dress for success. That was even in my normal 9 to 5. Like, when you were going to an interview, it was like, what was it? Like, dress for the job you want. Oh, there's our chicken timer. Dress for the part that you want, or dress for the job that you want, not for the job you're going for. And so there's a certain psychology around the way that you're dressed, changing and influencing your attitude and behavior and the way that you're acting. And so, I mean, even now, if I'm wearing a dress or a skirt, I find myself doing more things that put me in a state of feminine flow. And that feminine flow doesn't have to do, like, so many people get the word feminine and they just think like soft, meek, no backbone. And I'm like, no, that's
chicken feed in my soft.
Yeah, I was like, that's not what it is, but it puts me in the state of feminine flow. So when people think about, if you're reading in energies like masculine and feminine, like the yin and the yang, and like the different energies and states they put you in behaviorally and mentally, that they put me in more of that feminine flow. And I do find myself more kind of at peace and assured of myself. Whereas when I am dressed in that more, when I say masculine, it's not manly, but in a way that makes me feel more of that masculine energy, it makes me feel more powerful. It makes me feel more, whatever, and like I'm in a different headspace. I'm not thinking about these other, I'm, and the masculine energy. I wish I could remember this book, and maybe I'll put it in the show notes of the podcast if I can remember, but there's a great book on understanding as a woman, how we have masculine and feminine energy, and when we step into both, and the wounded feminine and the wounded masculine, and how we act in those spaces as well. Like, the wounded masculine is really all about that justification, that feeling like I need to overwork, overperform, and overdo these things in order to prove my value, right? That hunter. I need to go get the biggest tiger to prove I am the most dominant person here, right? And that's kind of what we step into. And if you're changing the way that you're dressing, the way that you're speaking, and part of that is that feminine flow is not needing justified, is gathering, getting things that come to you and flow to you, not feeling the need to fight, not feeling the need to be on guard, defend, do anything. It's literally just being so comfortable in who you are. And I think that we as women and we as mothers need to do more of that, and screw what the world says and screw what all of these other people are putting on you for expectations, and how you should be showing up, and where your value is and where your worth should lie. If you are, quote unquote, just a mom, I think we need to ditch the just because we all know that being a mother in and of itself is probably far more work than any other job we've ever done. And we don't need to justify, right? We talked about this in our last episode. I'm just a nurse. I'm just a doctor. I'm just a lawyer. No, because you know the work that goes into it. So I think in closing, it's really all about getting comfortable with that idea first yourself, and finding the value in it, finding what brings you the most fulfillment, seeing its value, understanding the scope of what you're doing, as a mother, like raising the future. If that doesn't give you a good kick in the pants, I don't know. I really don't know what will, but and I think it really just kind of starts there, is accepting it within yourself. Because if you can't do that, you're going to constantly feel the need to justify it to other people.
Yeah. It's like that saying, you have to love yourself before anybody else can love you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day to listen to this. Again, if you're on the podcast, or watch if you are on Facebook, we'll probably load this up on our YouTube channel too. So I don't know when people will stumble upon this if it's on YouTube, but hey, YouTube world. So as always, you can go catch us at on Instagram at the P.O.P community. Everything is always down in the show notes, all of the descriptions for where you can find us, all of our socials, all of our channels, and even some of the ways that you can work with us, as well as drop us a line, ask us questions, tell us what you thought. Even if you disagree, there might be a lot of people that this episode in particular ruffles some feathers, and we would love to engage in conversations with you if you needed to. And we're also always open to different suggestions, topics you want us to discuss. We have a question and a poll section in the show notes as well, if you want to tap on that. But anyway, we will catch you guys in our next episode. So we'll see you guys later.